Welcome into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni on what we can call, I guess, a transfer portal Monday. The transfer portal opened on Monday morning, and it's been in some ways a busy day around the country, and in some ways not, because a lot of these guys declared their intentions in the days leading up to the portal opening that they plan to do so. And so today is more of like the finality of formality, should I say, of just entering into the portal and beginning to have contact with coaches. Brian, what's been your impression so far of kind of what you've seen from the transfer portal kind of window opening today?
So I know that A&M fans are, there's a lot of guys in there. But just looking around the country, there's a lot of guys. Every school was being hit, People are losing starters. I mean, Alabama lost a starting offensive lineman. That doesn't happen. Bama is one of those that brings a bunch of guys in and doesn't lose starters. So, and then A&M still, even with the guys who may have been a bit surprising today, A&M still has not lost many guys that it needed to keep. It would have been nice for some of them, but really, it's sort of the two true freshmen that A&M that the coaches didn't have a choice with because it was a school decision, and then Tumisha Adeliak. That's really it. As far as guys that they would have gone to the mat for, would have been nice. Josh Moten, would have been nice if for depth and no other reason. But I think that he was reportedly arrested over the weekend, and it was the third time this year. So I don't know if he necessarily had a choice. But really, A&M has not been hit that hard, even though there are a lot of numbers.
Yeah, a guy like LJ Johnson is another guy that probably would have been nice depth-wise to keep in the backfield, especially if Devon Achane opts to head to the NFL. But to your point, I think the talk coming into this month and of the last couple of weeks of the regular season was all about this mass exodus from the 2022 class and all these guys that are going to end up leaving. And some guys have. That's been natural. Guys that didn't get a whole lot of playing time, like a guy like Ish Harris, who tweeted in the days leading up to the portal opening that he planned to enter and said that he's officially in there. I don't know if his name has quite shown up yet, but I would expect it to be in there by the end of the day, Monday or early Tuesday. Aside from a couple guys like that, obviously PJ Williams and Denver Harris are guys that are expected to move on and had run into trouble over the course of their first year at A&M. But there wasn't like this mass exodus. Guys always pointed to the Evan Stewarts and Jacoby Matthews and all the defensive linemen that they had, and that hasn't really transpired. And I think, you were on the live show earlier today on 24/7. I think you brought up a good point that the LSU game was really big in the sense that it just gave a glimpse into the future. And, to end 5-7, you can end the season on a high note. We talked about it at that time, just to be able to have some momentum and to give some of these players that glimpse of what the future could look like as they continue to develop into the offseason. I think it bodes well for A&M on that front. You're going to lose guys. It's the way the transfer portal works. I think that's certainly right. Heck, you look at a school like NC State. Devin Leary was probably one of the surprises of today. Starting quarterback for NC State enters the transfer portal, and that's a team that is preparing to head to a bowl game. So you're going to lose starters at times. You're going to lose key contributors. It's just the nature of the beast this time of year. But for the most part, I think with A&M, it's been a lot of guys that want to look for a new opportunity to maybe get some playing time elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when the wheels were falling off this season, well, which is pretty much the whole season until that LSU game, Nick Saban wanted to talk about how Alabama was on a 3-game win streak. Well, then A&M was on a 2-game win streak in the season if we're counting that. One of theirs was against an FCS team. A&M's was against UMass.
Well, they had an FCS game in there too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When he was bragging about this 3-game win streak, one of them was the FCS, the other was Auburn, and then the other was Ole Miss, who fell apart. Yep. So an FCS team, a team that didn't make a bowl, and Ole Miss. great job selling yourself, Saban. But yeah, during the middle of the season, I mean, if you would have asked me, if you would have asked fans, I mean, it looked like a lot of these guys were likely going to be gone. I mean, Evan Stewart, it was early in the year, but, when he missed a game due to suspension and then just, quarterbacks are having trouble getting him the ball, I would have thought he was gone. Gabe Denby, Walter Nolan, a lot of those defensive linemen, people just sort of assume because, they may not have been happy with either the product on the field or their playing time or whatever, but it really looks like A&M is going to keep almost all of these guys. And obviously they would have loved to have Denver Harris and PJ Williams stay, but, that was out of their control. So that was going to happen. I actually don't think either of those guys would have transferred if they didn't have to. So really, so far it's just Ish Harris. And Ish is a good player, liked him in high school, but, a small school kid. And I don't believe he saw the field at all this year. If he did, it was very briefly. And, with A&M lacking depth at linebacker, that was probably sort of a sign. And A&M's expected to get all of its linebackers back next year, so it's not going to change that depth chart for him.
No doubt. And quarterback, obviously, that was probably the one position you maybe expected to see some attrition, especially with Connor Wigman grabbing hold of the starting job late in the season and playing pretty well, and Max Johnson being there as well. Haynes King and Eli Stowers both announcing their intentions to enter the portal, and neither's a huge surprise for me. I think it was probably time for Haynes King to move on and find another opportunity. I still think he has the chance to be a good player in the right offense, one that maybe allows him to use his legs a little more and use his athleticism. It just wasn't going to really work out, I think, at A&M with Max Johnson and Connor Wigman there. And same goes for Eli Stowers, great kid that battled some injuries his senior year of high school and during his time at A&M, but, good athlete that'll probably look to find the right system, maybe one that again can kind of utilize his athleticism and get him out on the perimeter a little more. But, those ones to me kind of strike me as playing time opportunities. And then, like you said, basically Tanisha Adelaide is one of the ones that I expect he'll be probably a pretty highly recruited player. He's already announced a lot of offers.
Oh, he's already picked up a bunch of offers. Yeah, he and PJ Williams both have been pretty active this morning and today.
Chase Lane has also picked up a couple offers since he went in. Another guy that really good representation of A&M and will get some Power 5 interest. Has got some Power 5 interest already, and so. There's guys.
I saw Elijah Judy got an offer this morning. Elijah Judy's on the board with an offer.
He's potentially, I think he might have a visit set up to Nebraska. So
yeah, that was who his offers from. I think that's it as far as offers so far. Now again, today's the first day schools can talk to a lot of these guys. So that was going to be my the first day officially schools can talk to. It may not be the first day, but kids aren't going to post about offers before today if they did have them. If schools were skirting the rules.
Schools aren't going to admit it, but they've done the back channeling and talked to trainers and high school coaches and all those sorts of things, which, on both fronts is the way a lot of kids get advised to do it, is to kind of put feelers out and see what the market would be like for you and make sure that you don't enter the portal and not have a home. So it's just kind of naturally the way it works out. It's not really even, in most cases, schools doing anything nefarious. It's folks kind of reaching out and kind of getting a sense for what things will look like. I think to your point, that's the other thing notably that I took away from today is, I think when fans kind of look at this, there's this natural inclination that at 12:01 everybody was going to be in the portal and names could just start, people could just start offering and things could go from there. But the reality is, we've talked about, sometimes it takes 24 to 48 hours for a name to go into the portal. So names, even guys that declared their intentions in advance of Monday, it's still going to take maybe some time to get into the portal, have their name show up, and be able to fully start talking to schools and have those conversations. And, it's a busy day around the country for kids talking to schools and talking to coaches. And, it's one of those things that I think you kind of have to give it a day or two to let the dust kind of settle, let everybody get in there who's playing again. And there's going to be names. This is the start of a 45-day window. There'll be names that'll pop in over the next couple of days and weeks as well. That's not to be forgotten it all. Today's just the first day, but I think there were a lot of folks that were curious how this was going to work out, how it was going to kind of come together. Even personnel departments weren't really sure how this was going to go with kind of a portal window and portal period. So, but I think for the most part, it's been pretty smooth.
No, I agree. And, like you said, it's colleges. So here's how it works. It used to be you had to go and get a college coach to sign off on your transfer and all this stuff. And then you may have been limited, like you can't transfer to any future opponents or things like that. Now there's none of that. There are no limitations. And all you have to do is request that your school put your name in it. You don't even have to go through the head coach. You just have to go to compliance or wherever, ask them to put your name in it. And when you ask that, they have 24 hours to put it in there. So while A&M has had these players, last week, say, like Ish Harris or Denver Harris, last week they said, hey, I'm entering the portal. They can't officially ask A&M to do that until this morning, Monday morning. And then A&M has up to 24 hours. Now, we've seen a bunch of guys in, so it looks like they're doing it a quick turnaround. But yeah, that's why it wasn't, just an onrush at midnight, because you have to go through all this process. So we will see a lot of these names continue. Tomorrow will be another big day, and then, like you said, throughout this 45-day window, you still may get more. For kids that may be on the fence now.
No doubt, and A&M's working through the list, and there's a couple guys that have been connected to A&M and mentioned as potentially having mutual interest. But after the break, we're going to take a look at what are kind of the key positions for A&M to attack in this transfer portal. They've taken a couple guys in the past couple of years, and Max Johnson and Jameer Johnson, but
Jameer Johnson.
Jameer Johnson.
I always forget his name. I think that's the joke on the show. We can't ever remember him.
No doubt. But we'll touch on a couple areas we think A&M needs to really address during this transfer portal cycle. So stay tuned after a quick break. Welcome back into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, I think we're going to see a more active A&M in this transfer portal cycle. You and I have both talked about that. I think there's positions that they're going to look to attack. Receiver is one for me that they can still add guys at linebacker, even though they have guys expected to come back. I think that's still an area you can add depth, add productive playmakers. Couple names jumping out to me early on. One I mentioned last week on the board is Andrew Armstrong, a Texas A&M Commerce receiver that FCS players could enter before they could enter last week. And so Andrew Armstrong's a guy that's been in there for a couple days already, and interest came quickly for him from Texas A&M, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas. He has visits set up to Arkansas and Missouri. Intriguing guy at 6'6", 180, and very, very productive at Texas A&M Commerce. I do get the feeling, though, that A&M's going to have to move quickly. He's already got visits set up to Arkansas and Missouri. And, when I talked to him last week, he said, we kind of talked about, is he waiting for interest to kind of come in, or is he setting up visits? And he said both, frankly. He's kind of moving ahead with the process already. So that's a guy I think that the process is going to move quickly with. And if A&M wants to get in the mix there, it's probably going to happen over the next week and a half to 2 weeks.
Oh, no, for sure. And he's a kid. He's a wide receiver from A&M Commerce, played at Dallas Bishop Dunn. Tall kid, 6'5", which A&M needs that height at receiver. Now, the position that I didn't think was as huge a priority, but now is, if for nothing else than depth reasons, is cornerback now. Because, you've had Brian George, you've had Miles Jones, Denver Harris, and Josh Moten all enter the portal. So, they're going to need some depth at corner. So I would look for A&M to take a couple guys there. One guy that jumps out is Avery Helm. He was a 4-star kid out of Fort Bend Marshall a couple years ago, played with Adrian in high school, and he's at Florida. And he announced, I believe yesterday or this morning, that he was planning to enter. So he's a guy I would say to watch there. And, just talking about this, I mean, A&M is they have to take a lot of guys. I mean, they're just, if you look at the roster, it's down to like 60 or something now, and then there'll be more losses, and there are only 11 commits right now in the high school class. So they're going to take a bunch of transfers, and not all of those are going to be superstars. A&M wants to get those stars and plans to get it, but some of them just are going to be depth. You need depth. So I wouldn't look to think every single guy is going to be a splash get. But they're all at least have a chance of starting. And I said, if nothing else, they give you guys off the bench and in the rotation.
You just look at the way this past year went with the injuries and how far A&M had to go down on the depth chart in terms of playing young guys and guys that, frankly, a guy like Marquise Groves Killebrew that was coming back from an ACL injury at the end of his senior year of high school, and you look down at the end of the year, and he's playing significant minutes and playing significant role as a freshman. And so I do think it may not be those star names. A name that jumped out to me too, I'm really curious to see if A&M does pursue and is a name that they pursued in high school, is MJ Daniels. There's one that I don't know if he is officially in yet, or he tweeted his intention last week that he planned to enter the transfer portal, former teammate of McKinley Jackson. So that's an interesting name to me if you're looking at depth in the secondary and depth at the cornerback position. That, if I was A&M, I would look at a guy like that and would provide one of those, it might not be the splashiest name, but a transfer from Ole Miss, I kind of bounced back and forth. I was laughing with somebody recently about his recruitment, that he kind of bounced back and forth between Mississippi State and Ole Miss a couple times. It was kind of a Mississippi battle between those two schools. But I'm with you, a guy like him, a guy like Avery Helm, even.
And then you got the one that Oklahoma State fans are really upset at A&M about because they think they tampered.
Yeah,
A&M, who hasn't offered anybody yet and has not been great at the portal through the years,
exactly,
now being accused of being the one that's tampering. I'm not quite buying that one.
Yeah, Mason Cobb is the guy that, there was all kinds of uproar. And I checked with some folks around, Oklahoma State and all that. And one of the things brought up to me, the person who kind of made the claim has made claims in the past about other teams continuing to do it as well. So this is not necessarily a new thing. Look, if A&M were to end up with him, I think he'd be a great add. He was the second team all Big 12 performer, leading tackler for the Cowboys last season, kind of one of those guys that, we talked about linebacker, and if A&M wanted to go after, a productive player like that, I think he'd be a great fit. And, from out in Utah. But yeah, that one, I was sitting down to cover the A&M Boise State game, which was not pretty. And, there was all sorts of kind of uproar and unrest about Mason Cobb entering the portal. And I think that got him on our radar for sure.
Yeah. Still, by the way, has not said anything about being offered by A&M or anything.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that was a fan site that I think was a bit too much of being a fan. Because again, I mean, I think everybody, we've talked about the tampers in some way or another, goes to the back channels and stuff. But once again, A&M does not have the same recruiting mechanism in place right now that other schools do. So, that would be weird for A&M to not even have much set up for the portal, and all of a sudden just to jump in and start recruiting the guy, start calling him or whatever they'd have to do, especially because he's from Provo, Utah. So it's not even like he has, ties to anybody. So yeah, that was a bit odd, but hey, maybe A&M gets involved, but yeah, I don't think, and linebacker is a need, but it's not the one that, they have the starters coming back and everything. So who knows?
Yeah. It's one of those joys of the portal, right? It's kind of like, that's going to be, I think, we joke about the we didn't want him anyway fans who just kind of anytime a player goes elsewhere, well, we didn't want him anyway, we had kind of passed him. I think we're going to get so-and-so tampered with him
Oh yeah. Oh,
We're going to get those
100%.
fans for sure in the future. Just every time a player enters, well, so and so had, it couldn't have been our fault. Couldn't have just wanted to look for a new
Nick Saban will have a
opportunity.
press conference about it this summer. He'll talk
He
about how
will.
every player A&M signed they tampered with. So
Yeah, but it's going to be accidental, right? It'll be
yeah,
accidental.
100%. It wasn't a shot.
Yeah, wasn't 100% a shot, and Greg Sankey can get out the reprimand
Yes.
again and make things interesting. But no, I think I'm with you on the secondary. And another intriguing name I'm interested to see if A&M does get involved with is JD Coffey. He'd be another guy in the secondary that was a former top 100 prospect out of Kennedale, went to Texas and is in the portal as well. So, that would be another guy if you're looking at secondary options and guys to add depth there. I think he'd certainly be another opportunity. But there's going to be a ton of guys out there, and I think you will start to see A&M start to be connected to more and more guys as the week goes on, as guys get in, as they start to take phone calls, as offers start to go out. I think you'll start to see A&M be more and more active as the week goes along. This is the first of 45 days, so it's going to be interesting to see how this kind of goes over the next month and a half. Obviously, there's some teams still preparing for bowls too. You're trying to kind of juggle the transfer portal with the early signing period right now, which is also going on. And just touching on that, and as we kind of move into the last 2.5 weeks here of the early signing period, yeah, I know you've been checking on David Hicks and Damian Sanford, and that looks to right now be pretty promising in A&M's favor of being able to keep those two in the fold heading down the stretch here.
Oh no, for sure. But again, A&M only has 11 commitments. I don't think the plan this year was to take a huge high school class like they did last year with 31, but 11 is not ideal. So they're going to need to add people there too, because transfers are, unless it's a redshirt freshman or something, transfers are rentals. And they're also guys that are going to be looking towards the NFL. So you can't. You can't go, Bill Snyder, Kansas State. I'm going to really date myself here in the 90s. That's how he turned around Kansas State, was bringing in junior college players. But he would have to turn over his roster every 2 years, and it ended up not being sustainable. You can't do that with the transfer portal either. You need to have a base of homegrown talent. So, yeah. The early signing period starts 2 weeks from Wednesday. And so that's going to be that's going to be one to watch as well. If can A&M keep all 11 guys? Can they add others? Can they get in on, back in on Anthony Hill? Can Tony Mitchell, the Alabama commit, who's officially visiting, can they, flip him? So there's a lot of things to watch there. So A&M will be busy this month. There's a huge official visit weekend, not this coming weekend, but the one after. I can guarantee that they'll have transfers in to visit as well. So it's going to be a pretty active month or so.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of kind of a busy December, Javon Thomas is another guy that A&M is looking to hold on to down the stretch. Got to catch up with him on Friday night. TJ Rushing and Brian Gross-Armiento were out at that game. That sideline was just flooded with staffers. We were talking on the way home from that game that Texas had like 3 staffers out there with
they had 2 commitments in the game, so
they
weren't
just
on both sides.
Oh, exactly. No, they were there. Obviously, Malik Muhammad, Trevor Gooseby, Kyle
they had
Flood
3 commits. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had Malik Muhammad, Billy Walton, and Trevor Gooseby all there. So Kyle Flood, Pete Kwiatkowski, and Terry Joseph were all on the sideline. Texas Tech had a couple guys. SMU had some staffers as well. So there were quite a few assistants out on the sideline. Javon Thomas has kind of solidified his schedule now. South Oak Cliff will play on Friday night against Argyle. So sounds like after that he will head over to Fort Worth for his official visit. Wouldn't be surprised if he just ends up heading over Saturday morning, obviously, and then staying through Sunday. But we'll do his
TCU. Could stay through Monday morning if he did that, but that usually doesn't happen.
And so he technically could stay until then, and then he'll do his Texas A&M visit that last weekend as well with like you said, it's supposed to be a big official visit weekend. That was the plan all along for Texas A&M to get the last official visit, and I think that certainly bodes well for A&M to be able to counter whatever TCU puts on the table this weekend and really presents to him. So, I think that one is still trending in a very encouraging direction for A&M, but you're going to have to finish out the week strong, and he's going to have an in-home to come. We kind of talked about his official visit and in-home, and said he really wants to understand the plan for the future, where this A&M program is going to go after this year. So, that's going to be one of the most important talking points. We'll certainly be back next week, Monday, to kind of look back at what it will likely be a busy week and likely have a clearer direction of who A&M is really looking to go after in the transfer portal, and look ahead to that big weekend on the recruiting trail coming up December 16th through December 18th. You'll have state championship weekend as well that weekend. So it's going to be a big weekend around the Lone Star State. Be sure to stay locked in on the GigEm247 Sports YouTube page. We'll continue to have content coming throughout the week. And, if you haven't done so yet, be sure to like and share this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel or to the Spotify and iTunes channel if you listen to this on the podcast to get the latest when new podcast drops. Until then, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you guys soon.